Today I want to talk about how we are individuals, but we are also connected far more than we imagine, far more than we really understand. Now, the average person thinks that we are especially unique, and to a certain extent this is true, but there are so many influences that come from a wide variety of ideas, of associations, that to say that we are completely unique is a fallacy. Here are some of the ways that we are actually connected, and some of the ways in which there are individuals who are far outside of even this basic stratum. Now we have at the horizontal the political, and at the vertical the spiritual. Now I've created these angled circles basically on either both the horizontal and the vertical to show that there is depth, not only in between like liberal or conservative or libertarian and populist. There is depth to every single point of political association. There might be certain issues within your own political affiliation that you disagree with others on, and you might be further away from it three-dimensionally, as opposed to just being closer to somebody else's ideas on the other side of the spectrum. And the further you get away from your party three-dimensionally, the more you really are an individual going into an area which is very, very individualized. Now, I've made the green dots basically the average, so-called normal person. Now, the average so-called normal person will be at the center of both the spiritual and political spectrum. The center is the basic, proverbial unification of man, where most people are. That most people are what is considered as normal in the center of this diagram, and that's even taking into account the three-dimensional nature of this diagram. Now, the center being unified. That means that people feel more at home if they're more, moderate politically, if they're more moderate as far as spiritual beliefs. Even if you're Christian, maybe you're open to other ideas. Maybe you're Christian and you still don't want to judge other people. And maybe you're, you could say that you're Buddhist, but you think that there are plenty of other good Christians or Muslims, and there are other ways to go about this. And just because you're further away from this unifying idea on the spiritual spectrum, and you might be one of these, black dots that I made black just because I needed another color, that doesn't mean that's necessarily bad. It just means that you're either very, very individualized, or you have ideas that are far away from the unifying factors that creates the central nexus for so-called normal people. Now, politically, more moderate people, like I said, just spiritually, more accepting, more open people are more towards the center, the unifying center of this basic nexus. And politically, if you're more moderate, you'll be towards the center. But let's say if you're politically, you're very liberal on all of it, except for the idea that everyone should be forcibly taxed, then that would take you further away. That might make you a green dot that's further away on the spectrum, further out, both maybe vertically and horizontally and vertically, depending on your associations of that with spirituality. And we all have these dimensions where our political beliefs do play a part in our spiritual beliefs, and vice versa. So that might make you a green dot that's a little bit on the edge somewhere. These directions aren't meant to symbolize good and evil. There's no duality here. It's more of a nexus. Now, let's give an example that's not towards a green dot, towards the middle. Let's talk about these black dots that are really far out. Now, I consider myself as one of these black dots. What do these black dots represent? And they're usually they're not even very big even when they get close to the unifying factor, because very individualized people don't feel that close to being normal, even when their beliefs and their ideas are more towards the unifying factors. Now, what kinds of people are these? I consider myself one of these people that have very universal spiritual beliefs, but they're very fine-tuned. I know quite a bit about all religions and most spiritual practices, not most, but quite a few spiritual practices. There's so many spiritual practices and traditions in the world. I know quite a bit about most spiritual traditions, but quite a few spiritual practices. But that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that I believe in all of them. It just means that I have the range of understanding, and I accept most of them. I accept that they are all true on a certain level, depending on how you look at your practice, how you look at the universe, how you look at God or gods or different dimensions, and they're true based on that level. So they're true based on perspective. So my idea of things being true based on perspective would put me further out, because most people think that things are true in and of themselves. But I think that perspective is the higher degree of truth, because everything is true in a certain way. Now, most people think, okay, either Christianity is right or it's not right. Which one is it? I don't think it's that simple. So because I don't think it's that simple, I don't think that we can just put placid tape over a complete tradition or religion or spiritual ideology that says one thing or the other, true or false. It's not that I haven't made a decision. I just think that you have to look at it through a perspective. That would put me on the edge. Now, there are other things that would put you on the edge, like everything's true, no matter what, or nothing is true, no matter what. Socrates would be somebody that completely went against society, would be far away from the unifying central part of the nexus, because he questioned everybody's logic, and really tore apart the elite especially. So since most people agreed with the elite because it was convenient to do so, and there wasn't a whole lot of fervor for other ideas beyond that, Socrates was very unique, and he eventually got killed for it. Now, one of the reasons he got killed was because he believed in one God, and the idea of multiple gods was prevalent at the time. So that was another one of his very unique qualities that put him on the edge, being an individual that didn't feel anywhere near the central point of this nexus. Now, I don't feel anywhere near the central point of this nexus, or being moderate, or decidedly true or false on certain things spiritually. I don't feel like I'm towards that center. Now, just because you're open to other beliefs and you accept other people, that puts you towards the center, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you still don't believe that it's either right or wrong. It's just more about your attitude towards the people who hold these beliefs. Now, there are other factors that are beyond what this graph holds, because even dealing with this simple three-dimensional idea of perspective in these two relations, and then the unification of them, is very basic. But we are connected individuals, and what we have to realize as human beings is that we have an internal vocabulary that doesn't necessarily have to do with language or even philosophical thought, or our psychology or physiology or biology. Well, it does have more to do with biology and somewhat physiology. But as human beings, we advance together based on a reaction to other people's beliefs. Not necessarily understanding them or speaking their language, but without Islam, there wouldn't be Christianity as we know it. It's a constant exchange of ideas, even if it's negative. We constantly hold ourselves relative to other people who have even ideas that we view as opposed. And without the opposing religion that we think as the opposite, just on an individual level, there would be a great shift in where we are on even this basic nexus. Now, if you, on the political spectrum, if we just had liberals, for instance, and some parts of Europe you can say this is true, but if we just had liberals, and like there's conservative liberals in Europe, they're considered more conservative, but the whole spectrum is tilted towards the liberal, and in places like that's very socially conservative, and to a certain extent in some places politically conservative that is more economical. In the Middle East, we see that the whole spectrum changes when another faction is introduced. If Slavs move more towards the Middle East, or if we introduce something like the Arab Spring, where a lot of people start thinking, okay, well, we're trying to introduce a whole new idea to the spectrum towards creating a more liberal atmosphere socially. that throws the whole system into a new stage of evolution. It's not necessarily bad to, you know, make something top-heavy or side-heavy or however you want to say it. It just means that when you do so, the whole nexus shifts. So this nexus is essentially always moving. It's like, as human beings, ideologically, and you know, whether it's politically, spiritually, or, you know, or individually, you know, very specific beliefs, combinations. We're all moving together in this nexus, and we're moving through the gravitational shifts of ideology, I guess, if you wanted to take the analogy even further. But you know, there are always going to be people who are, you know, the black dots. You know, I consider myself a black dot that's further away, and it's not necessarily a bad thing or think that I don't want to be unified with, you know, the nexus. I just have very, very unique beliefs that I didn't take specifically from one book or somebody else's ideas. So that means that I'm kind of, you know, the odd man out in a way, and, you know, you feel that. When you're an individual who is one of those black dots, you know, on the outside, as the nexus moves and constantly viewing it from an outside perspective, then you feel that, you know, your perspective is different than everybody else's because you're not in the nexus. You're viewing it from out and watching how everybody moves, and you feel very lonely out there as well. And, you know, I know I have some very good friends, but they're few and far between, and at least my very good friends, because I am, you know, as far as relationships go, it doesn't have to be romantic, but just I am attracted to people who have, you know, who have this perspective that is on the outside, like those other black dots. And you know, I think that you really just have to look at your relation to, you know, what is considered normal, and your understanding of, you know, where you lie in relation to everything else. If you want to use this nexus, that's fine. If you don't, if you think it's stupid, that's fine. But where is your relation to other people? Do you feel like you're more towards the center? A lot of people feel like they're towards the center. Are you really? Or do you think that the whole idea of the center being like the most moderate unification or normal is stupid? You have to just try and understand where you fall in relation to other people in order to realize that, in order to start to realize that that we can be beyond the nexus, that we can be beyond, you know, diagrams like this, and that we can truly become an individual unaffected by any self-definition, and be something that may still have influences. You can still be a person that has many influences, but you can unchain yourself from these feeling of obligation to be a certain political or spiritual or lack thereof part of this nexus. And once you break those chains, once you stop defining yourself, once you realize how you define yourself, then stop defining yourself, that's when you can truly step back and appreciate who you are and look at how things truly are. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this video has been interesting. If you liked it at all, hit that thumbs up down there. If you want to comment, if you want to say you disagree, shoot it down there in the comment section below. If you agree or just want to say something else, shoot it down in the comment section below. And I will see you in the future. And just realize yourselves, brothers and sisters. Realize yourself.